all y'all, let's take a ride. You ain't gotta say a word, just slide inside. It's time to take your ass on another kind of trip, cause you ain't at the top if you don't got the chip. Grab some chips and a drink to sip and close your eyes and hit that switch. We're going to a place where everybody kick it, yeah, Blitzalytics. Ain't no friends and there ain't no simping, cause there ain't no team about to catch me tripping. Do you gotta get a stack or a third tier back? We got you covered all season to the ship from the draft. Take you to a place where you get that win, give you more than enough to defeat your friends. And if you can't take the heat, get your ass out the kitchen. We on a mission. Come along and ride on this fantasy. Slide, slide, slippity slide. When it's fall up on the line, we can ease your mind. Come along and ride on this fantasy. Slide, slide, who ride? If you wanna get the dub, you gotta tune in live. You are now watching Fantasy Voyage, presented by Blitzalytics.com. And here are your hosts, Cody Manning and Rob.
All right, here we are, guys. So, welcome into the Fantasy Voyage. This is Cody. Cody talks NFL himself. As you can tell, I am rolling solo today for our Blitz listeners that probably already are aware from the football happy hour and from this week's Blitz breakdown. Unfortunately, our boy Rob that makes us all look beautiful with these graphics around me right now is unfortunately sick today, and while he does have the strength and he's manning up to help me run this stream for you guys, he just doesn't have the voice. It's a little rough right now. So we're trying to get that smooth and soulful voice a break off this week so he can finish strong over these next, we got about 11 weeks of at least the regular season. We'll see how this goes on the news topic I'm going to talk about here shortly. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into this, guys. This will be a quicker episode just because it is just me by myself. I'm going to run through the news, the injuries. I'm going to quickly run through studs and duds. It's normally more reflecting on the past week, but with it already being a Thursday, I'm going to kind of flow through that pretty quickly. I'm going to give my waiver wire targets. And then my starts and sits, and then, of course, my streamable defenses, which, as Rob says, you guys all come here for. But first things first, Nick Foles is now the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears. He led that comeback against the Falcons this past week, so it's his job going forward. First thing I put on the script is he streamable? That is possible if he can play like he did in the second half, getting 3 touchdowns. He's definitely a plausible, streamable quarterback going forward, but is going to be dependent on the matchup. He's got a rough matchup against that Colts defense this weekend. I will touch on that later in the episode, but I wouldn't stream him right now. But if the Bears are going against a weaker secondary and he continues to play at the level that he played in that second half of the game, he can be played in your lineup. Next thing, guys, I'm sure we all know by now the Titans and Steelers game has been postponed because there have been, I believe, now 4 players from the Titans that have been placed on the COVID list. And there's personnel, I believe it's up to 5 or 6 personnel now. I put together this script Tuesday night, so these numbers might not be correctly corrected. Now the Titans and Steelers, it's not playing this week. So owners, if you own any Titans or Steelers, go to your lineup right now and put them on your bench and start planning how you're going to make these adjustments. I did see this earlier this afternoon. The most likely scenario on how this is going to work is they're going to move the Steelers and Ravens game from week 7 to week 8. Steelers and Ravens on a bye they both have byes right now on week 8, and then the Steelers and Titans game that's supposed to be played this week would move from week 4 to week 7. And then Titans bye week right now is week 7. And this is contingent on there's no more positive tests from the Minnesota Vikings. We are lucky that the Minnesota Vikings had no positive tests. Let's pray that it continues. So that doesn't have to affect this weekend's matchup between the Texans and the Vikings, but it sounds like that is going on as planned. I believe the Vikings are actually going to be in their facility practicing at some point, if not by now. I do want to let people know I don't know how fantasy football leagues will be affected by any future postponements of games, but I just want NFL fans to not overreact to any postponement to games. The season will happen. The NFL has basically rented out the hotels for the next. Hold on, Rob's typing something. Sleeper Apps has said they're allowing COVID slots. By the way, okay, so that's cool. So you don't have to release anybody if you are dealing with this. So that's depends on the platform if they're going to create any room for anybody that has to deal with postponements. But to get back to the point really quick, I was going on. Basically, the NFL has rented out or put down a deposit for the hotels here in Tampa a month out past the current Super Bowl date. So the NFL is ready. Like they basically have a ghost week that they can fill in any needed games at the end of the year, and they'll just push back the playoffs a week or two if needed. So don't worry, there will be a complete season. I'm sure the NFL will find a way to make that happen. Obviously, there would be a worry how that would affect fantasy championship weeks if there is an extra week of football. But I guess it's just a year. We'll just have to deal with it. And then other than that, guys, going into this, I'll just talk about those two teams, though, really quick. Deontay Johnson, he's dealing with a concussion. That gives him more time to return for their next game for the Steelers. I think he was practicing in a limited form today. And then I did see that A.J. Brown, who missed last week's game, was kind of a borderline play this week against the Steelers. But now with the extra week off, they expect A.J. Brown should be good to go next week. Other injuries, Chris Godwin, he's expected to miss this week, as well as Leonard Fournette. He had something that popped up. It sounds like he might not be playing. Chris Carson, he had a knee sprain. I think he could play this week. Tariq Cohen, if you guys missed, he torn his ACL. So he's done for the season. Expect a heavier workload for David Montgomery. Russell Gage is dealing with a concussion. Brian Edwards and Henry Ruggs, the both rookie wide receivers for the Raiders. Edwards is dealing with the ankle injury. He's week to week. He is out this week. Henry Ruggs, I know he's not. I believe he didn't practice yesterday. And when earlier in this week, Gruden said he was concerned over their injuries. Michael Pittman Jr., he's dealing with a compartment leg syndrome. So he's likely out till week 8. So the Colts are already out Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman Jr. So Zach Pascal is the name to watch, but they'll probably end up turning more to the tight ends with Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, and Trey Burton is now returning to the roster. And then sadly, Jordan Reed just continues to deal with injuries. He has suffered a knee sprain, so he's placed on IR, so he can return in 3 weeks. But they got George Kittle back this week. He practiced in full, so that there should be no worries with that going forward, hopefully, for Kittle. I'm going to quickly go through my studs and duds for you guys. At the quarterback position, Patrick Mahomes. He was the number one quarterback this past week. I know it's kind of chalk when we talk about him. I normally what me and Rob try to do with the show is not talk about the guys that are going to perform every week, but you got to give kudos to this guy. There's a reason why he went in the second round in most drafts. He was 31 of 42, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, and this year he's been showing that rushing ability more and more. He had 4 rushes for 26 yards and a touchdown, 40 points. So Patrick Mahomes, he definitely won people their matchups this week. Dud is Gardner Minshew. I was definitely one of the people that kind of were buying into the Gardner Minshew hype after the first couple of weeks, and he definitely disappointed everybody with what everybody thought was a great matchup last Thursday night. He was finished as the number 30 quarterback for the week. He was 30 of 42. He had an interception. He had 3 rushes for 22 yards and a fumble, 9.2 points. We'll see if he can bounce back, but that's the thing with Gardner Minshew. You got to understand with guys like him, you are going to be rolling the dice. And then my stud running back of the week is Alvin Kamara, number 1 running back. He had 6 rushes for 58 yards. He had 13 receptions, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 14 targets. He ended up getting 44.7 points. My dud last week is Mark Ingram. He finished as the number 61 running back, 7 rushes for 30 yards, only 1 target, 3 points. It's kind of a muddled backfield, and I'm glad I don't have much ownership invested into that. My stud wide receiver is Keenan Allen. He finished as the number 3 wide receiver last week. He had 13 receptions for 132 yards, a touchdown, and he had 19 targets. I believe I saw yesterday with Justin Herbert taking over, he has been averaging 14 and a half targets per game. So the rookie quarterback is looking his way. So if I'm a Keenan Allen owner, I definitely want Justin Herbert in that lineup as long as he can stay there. The dud of the week was Marquise Brown. They got into the Ravens just didn't look like themselves, and they needed their wide receivers to step up in a shootout with the KC offense, and they just failed to do so. He finished all the way down to the number 95 wide receiver. He had 2 receptions for 13 yards on 6 targets, 3.3 points. Again, that's what happens with these boomer bust guys, is they're either going to go off for you in the right matchups, which you would think against the Kansas City Chiefs, or they're just going to completely let you down. My stud of the week, I don't know if this is 2012 or what, but Jimmy Graham, number 1 tight end on the week. He had 6 receptions for 60 yards on 2 touchdowns. He had 9 total targets. He had 24 points. So is this Jimmy Graham going forward? I don't know. Maybe it is because of a guy like Nick Foles will look his way. Nick Foles definitely used the tight ends there in Philadelphia a couple years. So I'm not sure about this week. I'll talk about that here sooner. But Jimmy Graham may become fantasy relevant again if Nick Foles continues to look his way. And then my dud of the week, this is the second time he's ended up as a dud for me, is Mark Andrews. Just like I talked about, Marquise Brown had a great matchup where they should have been in a shootout where he would see tons of targets, which he did. He just didn't capitalize on them. He had 3 receptions for 22 yards on 8 targets for 5.2 points. All right, guys, I do need to kind of take a little drink here. Bear with me after running through that. Those are the studs and duds. And again, normally a reminder, when me and Rob do our studs and duds, we do try to reflect on last week and project to future weeks. But with it being so late, being already Thursday, I'm just kind of speeding through this since I'm going solo on you guys. But I will kind of expand, give more context on the next couple sections. And then here's my quarterback. So here's my waiver wire targets of the week. Now, again, how this works is they have to have more than 50% availability and ownership in leagues. This is per Yahoo. My quarterback ad of the week is Justin Herbert. I talked about him earlier. He's available in 79% of the leagues. Now, this is more of a projection. I'm saying right now, don't play him this week. I do not like his matchup against the Bucs, and you would have to debate if you would want him on your bench against the Saints. This past week, he had 330 yards, a touchdown. He also had a pick, but you're going to get that stuff with rookies. And he had 3 rushes for 15 yards. Now, that's 2 straight games where he's thrown over 300 yards. He has tons of targets, like I talked about with Keenan Allen, that he's targeting heavily. He still has Mike Williams. He's feeding Hunter Henry. He's been getting both Joshua Kelly and Austin Eckler involved in the passing game. Now, obviously, there is a concern if Tyrod Taylor does come back and take the job. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily need to add him. Maybe if you're in a 12-team or more league, you might want to add him on your bench if you are unhappy with your current quarterback situation. Because after the next 2 weeks, as long as they don't give the job back to Tyrod, if he were to come back in the following weeks, the Chargers face the Jets, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, and the Raiders. All four of those defense has been suspect to giving up a lot of yards through the air. So I think that's a little stretch that you can get there. And if he does continue to put up 300-yard plus games, there's a potential he could be a very favorable, streamable quarterback for a good month in the middle of the season. Again, you got 2 weeks to make the decision. You can stash him on your bench right now. See how he performs against this defense this weekend. And if he impresses, I'd get him at least on your bench the following week to maybe possibly stream him in that time span. My running back waiver wire target of the week is Myles Gaskin, only available in 53% of the leagues. But he's getting the majority of the touches in that Dolphins backfield. He had 22 rushes for 66 yards. He had 5 receptions for 29 yards on 5 targets. Now, he didn't do much with his volume, but volume is king, and he still got people at least 10. I think he got me in a 16 team league in our Blitz league. He got me like 12 points that night. So he offers a high floor. Brian Flores, the head coach, talked him up in the media this week. So I think they do believe, at least they believe in him as far as he's going to be a guy they can count in on week in and week out. So if you need like a low end flex play that has a high volume and that's involved in the passing game, I think he's a guy to add, at least on your bench. I mean, he's only available in 53% of the leagues. If he's available in your league, I would consider at least putting him on your bench. Then my wide receiver ad of the week, Justin Jefferson, the first round pick for the Vikings. He's available still in 70% of the leagues after going off this past weekend. He had 7 receptions for 175 yards, 1 touchdown, and he had 9 targets in the passing game. Finally, this is what happens when you get your talented wide receiver that you drafted Minnesota involved. Get him targets. He can fill that. I'm not saying he's Stephon Diggs right now, but he can fill that Stephon Diggs role and put up numbers. Again, I will go back to the summer preview, back when this used to be the fantasy football hot seat. I said if Justin Jefferson can pick up this offense, he could be a wide receiver 3 that can put up wide receiver 2 to 1 numbers every week. So get him now if he's available, especially if you are desperate for a wide receiver. He could be I do view him that he could be a wide receiver 3 right now, but if he can continue to see those amount of targets and produce like that, I mean, shoot, he's a wide receiver 2 that can put up wide receiver 1 weeks. My tight end of the week is my boy. I said last week, I'm gonna go ahead and push it. I was kind of scared when Jack Doyle did return. I thought Jack Doyle would take away from his role, but they still featured him in the passing attack. Mo Alley Cox, he's available in 91% of the leagues. He had 3 receptions for 50 yards. He had a touchdown. And he had 3 targets in that game. Now, there is some worry about Trey Burton getting involved, but like I mentioned earlier, Michael Pittman Jr. is hurt. So they do need that big body presence in the red zone, and that's what Mo Alley Cox offers Phillip Rivers. And I think Phillip Rivers likes looking his way. He knows he can chuck up the ball to him because he has such a height and size advantage on the guys he's facing that he can jump up and go get that ball like we saw the past couple of weeks. So I think he's got a role going forward, and he potentially can be a top 10 tight end in fantasy this year if they continue to involve him in the passing attack. And then my flex ad of the week is Alan Lazard from the Packers. He seems to have carved out that number 2 role behind Devontae Adams, and especially if Adams does miss weeks, he's going to have weeks that we just saw. He had 6 receptions for 146 yards, a touchdown on 8 targets. Now, I did see Devontae Adams is practicing today. So obviously he will be taking a step back, but he's the guy to have in case Adams does have to miss any games. So he's definitely worth adding on your bench. And depending on if you're dealing with injuries or maybe some of these postponements, maybe you could slide him in like the wide receiver 3, I think, with Adams there. If Adams doesn't play, though, I kind of view him as a wide receiver 2. And then I kind of add like a note here. Deebo Samuel's back at practice. So if somebody didn't like stash them, if you play in a league maybe that doesn't have an IR spot for whatever reason, and owners had to deal with these postponements, maybe owners had to deal with early season injuries, and they couldn't stash Deebo Samuel on their bench, go see if Deebo Samuel is available in the waivers in your leagues, and if he is, scoop him up. I wouldn't necessarily rush him into your starting lineup when he does play. I do kind of stay away from playing players in their first return from a long stint of an injury. A guy misses a week like Devontae Adams, I'm going to play Devontae Adams. But when the guy's coming off a Liz Frank injury that could flare up again, I do kind of stay away from that, but get him on your team if Deebo Samuel is available. So again, Deebo Samuel, if he's out there available, my quarterback out of the week is Justin Herbert, Myles Gaskin at the running back, Justin Jefferson at the wide receiver, Mo Alley Cox at the tight end position, and then Alan Lazard at the flex position / wide receiver. And then I'm gonna go ahead and wow. Well, things were off for me too, because I just realized I typed in my starts and sits section in Rob's parts. So I must have been paying attention when I typed that up the other day. But my start of the week, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. For the quarterback position is Ryan Fitzpatrick. He had a great week last week. He's going against the Seahawks. That might sound weird, but for those that don't know, the Seahawks have given up the most passing yards in NFL through 3 weeks. 1,292 yards. Fitzpatrick, he can sling it. He's going against a hot Russell Wilson, so they're probably going to play catch up a lot. So I'm willing to bet on that. And I think he's a great streaming option at the quarterback position, especially if you're somebody maybe that has a Ryan Tannehill and a Ben Roethlisberger that you've been counting on, and you need to look for a different option. I would look at Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. And my sit of the week, if you are in a crunch situation like that, don't try to stream Carson Wentz against the 49ers. The 49ers have allowed the second lowest amount of passing yards so far this season, only 562 yards. I saw a report from the practice today. There's only one active wide receiver on the 53-man roster for the Eagles that is practicing today. Dallas Goedert just got placed on IR, so he's out for 3 weeks. So if you're out a Big Ben, if you're out a Ryan Tannehill, I would not go look Carson Wentz's way to try to solve your problems. I would definitely do a Fitzpatrick over him. My start of the week at the running back position is James Robinson. He's got control of that Jacksonville backfield, and he's going against the Bengals this week. The Bengals have the second worst defense against the run so far this year. They have allowed 545 yards. We kind of saw the bad Minshew last week, so maybe they try to get the run game going this week to kind of take the load off his shoulders. And Robinson does get featured once again. And like I said, he's got a great matchup. So if you got James Robinson, I would be comfortable playing him this week. My sit of the week is Joshua Kelly against the Bucks. The Bucks have the third best defense against the run. They've only allowed 211 yards. I kind of see this being a game where maybe the Bucks do get open up to an early lead on the Chargers. So if that does happen, the Chargers could be playing a lot of catch up. If that happens, they're going to be running less against an already really good running defense. And that probably means more of an Austin Eckler share load over a Joshua Kelly. So if you're a Joshua Kelly owner, I know he's been very good for people so far in the first 3 weeks. I'm a big fan of him. But this would be the 1 week I would consider looking elsewhere instead of playing him. My start for the wide receiver position, I just talked him up in my waiver wire target section, is Alan Lazard against the Falcons. The Falcons have the second worst defense against the pass, allowing 1,051 yards so far through the season. Aaron Rodgers is hot right now. And even if Devontae Adams plays, I would be comfortable playing Lazard this week just because of that matchup against that Falcons secondary. So if you do happen to pick him up, I think this would be the week to keep rolling with him. And then my sit of the week is I hate saying this because I love Anthony Miller and he is a year 3 wide receiver, and he did do pretty well with Foles. Anthony Miller against the Colts. The Colts have the best pass defense right now. They've only allowed 396 yards. Now, like I said on the football happy hour, I do want to see what happens with this Colts defense when they face a legit offense. And we do got, Nick Foles in there. So we'll see if he can maybe dice up this Colts defense. We'll see. But I'm not willing to bet on it. I think this will be a good week to sit Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller is kind of he goes off 1 week, then he kind of has his quiet weeks. This could be one of those quiet weeks for Anthony Miller. So if you did have a different option than Anthony Miller, I would consider that this week. My start of the week is TJ Hawkinson against the Saints. I know people might think I'm crazy because Jesse James has caught himself a touchdown this past week for Detroit, but TJ Hawkinson's still playing the majority of the snaps, especially the amount of routes that he's running. And he's actually got a really good matchup against the Saints. I didn't realize this until I saw this stat on Twitter, I believe, last night. The Saints defense kind of sucks against the tight end position. In week one against tight ends, they allowed 6 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown. In week two, they allowed 13 catches for 136 yards and a touchdown. And this past week, they allowed 9 catches for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they are struggling to cover tight ends this week. So if you got TJ Hawkinson, I think this is the week to play him in your lineup. And my sit of the week, like I talked about him in my stud section for tight ends, it's Jimmy Graham. Against the Colts, like I talked about, Colts got one of the better pass defenses right now, and they also have one of the better set of linebackers in the NFL. Guys like Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke, if they want to stick down on a guy like Jimmy Graham, they can. They have the athleticism to keep up with an older Jimmy Graham. Kenny Moore is one of the best slot corners in the NFL, so if they want to stick a Kenny Moore on him, they can do that. So I don't know if I like Jimmy Graham's matchup against the Colts, but I do keep an eye on him. If he's available, he might be somebody that to watch if he does perform against this defense going forward. So those are my starts. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a start. James Robinson is a start. Alan Lazard's a start. TJ Hawkins is a start. My sit is Carson Wentz, Joshua Kelly, Anthony Miller, and Jimmy Graham. And then my top 5 streamable defenses for this week, guys. I don't know if they're available, but I had to put them on there. The Baltimore Ravens. They just gave up a bunch of points to the Kansas City Chiefs. There is a slight chance that maybe some owner felt, hurt by that, and they might have dropped the defense for somebody else. So if the Ravens defense is available, go grab them right now. They have a great matchup against the football team. The football team offense is prone to make mistakes, prone to 3-and-outs, turnovers. Dwayne Haskins is an up-and-down quarterback at this point of his career. So the Ravens defense is out there. Make sure you put them in your lineup this week. And then these ones, you could possibly find them out there on the waiver wire if you're looking for streaming options. The Rams against the Giants, I definitely like that matchup. The Giants offense is struggling to find an identity, especially with Saquon Barkley being out. Daniel Jones does have his turnover problem that he has yet to fix in his career. So there's turnover opportunity. And then you're talking about Aaron Donald, who can just blow up an offensive line. And he's going against one of the worst offensive lines right now in the league. So I like the Rams against the Giants as a streaming option this week if you need one. My third ranked streamable defense is the Bucks against the Chargers. I kind of talked them up throughout this episode. I really like what Tampa's doing right now. They are putting together, we talked about on the football happy hour, a potential Super Bowl caliber type of defense. So there's a lot of turnover opportunity here. And there's a lot of oh yeah, I forgot to say that. Rob's typing something in the. I'll get to that at the end, Rob. That's my fault. But yeah, Bucks against the Chargers as a streamable defense. I like the matchup. The Chargers offensive line, it's pretty banged up right now, so I think they're going to be able to get after Justin Herbert. Herbert's a rookie. There's an opportunity for turnovers, interceptions. I think there's a lot of opportunity for sacks here, and the Bucks aren't afraid to go after the ball. My number 4 streamable defense is the Colts against the Bears. This one is, I would say this, I do caution people. I mean, I am streaming my Colts this week. I kept them after that Jets performance, but I do think this is a good matchup they could potentially take advantage of. The Colts do have some playmakers on this defense. And then I think there's ways they can slow down this Bears offense. It's going to be, we're going to see if this Bears offense is legit or not underneath Nick Foles. It's a high floor defensive play, I think, with the Colts. I do think they are going to be able to find ways to create turnovers. That's my play here, is if you are streaming the Colts defense, it's more of a high floor play that can potentially turn into a high ceiling if Nick Foles does turn the ball over. My number 5 defense, I kind of talked bad about them earlier, but it is the Seahawks against the Dolphins. Yes, they struggle on defense. But as much as hey, now let me say this first. I am streaming Ryan Fitzpatrick, the guy I said to start earlier. I am streaming him. But just like Gardner Minshew, Ryan Fitzpatrick has a risk of turnovers. So that's why I think the Seahawks can be a streamable defense this week. There is a potential Ryan Fitzpatrick has a bad Fitzpatrick game and he throws 3 interceptions. I mean, the Dolphins line seems like they have taken some steps based on their performance last week, but they still will struggle. So there could be a potential for sacks here. So, I mean, it's a Pete Carroll defense. So I'm willing to take a chance on it. And I actually heard a cool stat from, I believe, the Schefter podcast earlier today when I was listening to it. Even though it's a 1 p.m. slot time, the Seahawks actually perform really good at the 1 p.m. slot time as a West Coast team. Over their past 9 matchups, they're 9-0. So that's a stat I got to remember for Cody Talks NFL tomorrow. So again, my top 5 streamable defenses this week is the Ravens against football team, Rams against the Giants, the Bucks against the Chargers, the Colts against the Bears, and the Seahawks against the Dolphins. And guys, this was a very quick episode, so I'm already at the end. Thank you for bearing with the solo podcast. It doesn't look like we have much questions. That's fine for me, guys. I kind of got to get going anyways. But Rob does have some advice I forgot to mention. So we didn't get to do the trade part because obviously Rob's sick. But what he says is advice from Rob this week is to learn from this week and do not put all your eggs in one basket by condensing your team to superstars by thinning out your bench. Diversify and spread out amongst teams and search for depth. So that's your advice from Rob. He also mentioned if anybody, I think he said if anybody did bad last week, go trade for them this week because they're about to go off. So try to do that before Sunday. Again, guys, thank you for tuning in. I know this was a very random time. I assume my boy will be feeling better by next Wednesday. So we should be back on a Wednesday morning between that 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. slot time Eastern. So do look out for that. I will be doing the Cody Talks NFL tomorrow morning at the normal time between 10 to 11 a.m. So please make sure you do subscribe to our YouTube channel so you do know when we go live with our podcast. But if you ever do miss an episode, the audio does go on the Blitzlytics Podcast Network. So subscribe to us on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, any major. Basically, you can find us even on the lower end podcast platforms. Just search Blitzlytics Podcast Network, and you'll get all of our shows on there, the audio versions, if you ever missed the live version of the show. And then Football Happy Hour is always on 9 p.m. Easterns as well. The Blitz Breakdown, Steel City Sermon. Well, I'll have to talk to Roy about this week because unfortunately his team isn't playing for another week. Again, guys, I hope you guys go win your fantasy football matchups. I'm going to go ahead and head out. Thank you for tuning in this week. I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Blitz out.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your captain speaking. You are now aboard the Fantasy Voyage Express. Time to pack your bags and let us take you on a journey to victory. Come on, y'all, let's take a ride. You ain't gotta say a word, just slide inside. It's time to take your ass on another kind of trip, cause you ain't at the top if you don't got the ship. Grab some chips and a drink to sip and close your eyes and hit that switch. We're going to a place where everybody kick it. Yeah, Blitzlytics. Ain't no friends and there ain't no simping, cause there ain't no team about to catch me tripping. Do you gotta get a stack or a third tier back? We got you covered all season to the ship from the draft. Take you to a place where you get that win, give you more than enough to defeat your friends. And if you can't take the heat, get your ass out the kitchen. We on a mission. Come along and ride on this fantasy. Slide, slippity slide. When it's all up on the line, we can ease your mind. Come along and ride on this fantasy. Slide, who ride? If you want to get the dub, you gotta tune in live. You are now watching Fantasy Voyage, presented by Blitzlytics.com. And here are your hosts, Cody Manning and